12 years ago, I was a 23-year-old youth pastor, had just been married for a year, and my wife and I just leased our very first car, and I actually put it just down the street here to be serviced. And as I was walking, waiting for the oil change of that car to be finished, I so clearly heard the voice of God say, "Kevin, pick up your eyes, look around. This is your city. These are the people that I've called you to serve." That word haunted me in a good and holy way. It wrecked me in that moment. Tears started flowing down my face, and as tears started flowing down my face, he even said, "Kevin, I want you to look up and look at the building directly in front of you." He said, "You will fill that building multiple times for the glory of God." That building is a civic arts center, which I still believe we will one day fill multiple times for the glory of God.
So I had just had our third child, and you were laid up in bed with a pretty bad back injury, and you had come to me and started sharing about what you felt like God was saying to do, that it was time to go, that it was time to move, that it was time to take these steps of faith. And I remember thinking, okay, God, this is gonna be a lot. We have 3 kids that are under 3 years old. It's a very busy time, but being excited and willing to do what God was calling us to do. And we began to start selling our stuff. We ended up getting out of our lease early. We ended up moving in with my parents for several months while we just consolidated and started saving a lot of money. And really, what did we sell out? Our 401k and cashed it out, our 401k, and then we started looking for houses out here. We would come out to Thousand Oaks and we would look for houses and get denied a lot.
1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times.
Yeah, but we finally found a place, and we finally were able to make the move out here, which was very exciting and scary all at the same time.
It was, because as we had moved out here on the 5th place that we applied for, it was like in the last hour too. It was like the last day of our employment at our previous place, and I mean, it was like, God, is this really going to work out? And sure enough, at the last hour, God came through, which was a beautiful, beautiful testimony of his faithfulness and goodness. And so, you know, we moved here and we started meeting with people. We revisited some relationships that we had here previously from when we were youth pastors, all those years previous, and started meeting with pastors around the area too, trying to get a read on the spiritual climate, introduce ourselves, share a little bit about what God placed in our hearts. And one of the gentlemen that we met with was actually the pastor of Lighthouse Church, which is the church that we are a part of now. And at that time, we had about a 30-minute meeting scheduled, and we just were sharing. And that 30-minute meeting turned into 3 hours, lots of tears, lots of vision. And we left that meeting, and basically it was, hey, rather than starting the church that you came here to start, would you consider taking this one? And so we spent months praying through that, and ultimately felt like that's what God wanted. And it was awesome too, because like we were excited. There's so many great people that were here that we got a chance to know, to build with, and great opportunity to serve a great city, the city that God placed in our heart. And so we said yes to that. And as we said yes to that, we also, one of your prayers was what?
I wanted to do it with friends. Like if I remember us talking and dreaming one day about if we could do this with anybody, who do we want to do it with? And I was like, I want to do it with our friends. I want to do it with people that we love and we know. And Tyson and Eddie came to mind. Shetty and Nicole came to mind.
They were delayed in their obedience, but they still obeyed.
But it was so cool to watch how God worked, not only in us, but also in Tyson and Eddie, because we had been talking to them, trying to convince Tyson to move for years, and he'd constantly said no.
Right.
But when we had moved out this way, he was also feeling a tug that it was time for something new. And so it was so cool to see what God was doing, not only in us, but also in them at that same time.
And as God was like bringing teams together, there's some great staff here, we're bringing new people in, and even as we were talking with Tyson, they had a very comfortable job, years and years of, all their whole life was lived up in Seattle. And as God was stirring their heart, cast a vision, and at that point I said, hey, here's where we're at. I got like a 15-hour-a-week janitorial job at the church. Would you guys uproot your whole life with teenage boys and move here? And sure enough, they did. And as part of the sacrifice that we made, together. My sister was living with us, and now the Ramsdale family had moved in with us. There was 10 of us in a little 1,400 square foot house.
It's cozy.
It was cozy. His boys would blow up an air mattress every night, sleep in our living room, and just beautiful what God did. And I'm convinced that as a result of that obedience and sacrifice, it's amazing just God's promises that have been fulfilled along the way. And it's the opportunity today that we get to, when we hear stories of life transformation. And over the last several years, hundreds of people being baptized, watching marriages being restored, people actually have been healed, lives have been altered and changed, and it's all glory to God. And we wanted to just let you know, like, if that word that God's spoken to you, that obedience that maybe you're delayed, today's a great day to obey, and know that obedience is met by sacrifice, and that sacrifice is always worth it. So as we not only celebrate and reflect on the faithfulness of God over the last 40 years, I want to look to you today and make a final statement. And that statement really is a call to action. I believe that you have a word from God, something that God spoke to you specifically about. You might have been sitting on this word for several years, several months, or even decades. That word, the next step I would encourage you is to be met by obedience. That's up to you. Will you obey the word that God has spoken to you? Whenever you obey a word that God speaks to you, it leads to a level of sacrifice, but that sacrifice is always met by God fulfilling His promise, and it is always worth it. So today is a great day to take that step of obedience in faith. And the final statement I'll make for us as a church, as we celebrate 40 years, we are just getting started. The best is yet to come.